8. Keyshawn Newell. One day in 2016, a woman walked into a bank near Cleveland, Ohio, and handed a note to the teller demanding money. The FBI released surveillance photos of the thief, hoping that someone would come forward and identify her. Her name was Brianna Fluid, and she was just 17 years old when two men named Keyshawn Newell and Jeffrey Doss recruited her to commit the robbery. After the photo was released, the pair became worried that she would rat them out. To make sure that didn't happen, Newell shot and killed Brianna. A few days later, Newell confessed to his mother, Tiffany, about the murder. He revealed more details over the following days, and Tiffany overheard Keyshawn bragging to his sister about the crime. As a mother with daughters of her own, Tiffany couldn't bear the thought of someone hurting them and getting away with it. She contacted the FBI about her son's suspected involvement and even convinced Keyshawn's sister to testify against him. 3 minors who witnessed the murder also testified. Keyshawn was convicted on numerous charges, including murder. He tried to appeal his case but failed. His mother's brave decision to turn him in and both Tiffany and Keyshawn's sister's willingness to testify undoubtedly helped to put and keep him behind bars, where he belongs. 7. Jorge Avilla Torres. In July 2009, police performed a welfare check on a woman named Amanda Snell at a military base residence in Arlington, Virginia, after the 20-year-old Navy intelligence specialist failed to report for duty the night before. They found her dead inside of a closet. An autopsy determined that someone had strangled Snell. Detectives suspected that the killer lived on base, since it would have been difficult for a civilian to get past security. They took a DNA sample, but their search turned up fruitless for months. The following year, 3 women were kidnapped in Arlington. They were held at gunpoint and bound with electrical cords inside their apartment. Their captor took one of the women to a remote area where he abused and choked her. Then he left her to die on the side of the road. All 3 women survived the horrifying ordeal, and they provided authorities with enough information about their attacker and his vehicle to lead to a suspect. Jorge Avilla Torres was a soldier who was stationed at the base where Snell was killed. In fact, he lived just 2 doors down from her. Evidence found inside his SUV linked him to the kidnapping, and DNA connected him to Snell's murder. Avilla Torres was arrested for his crimes and taken to jail. At a time when it was of utmost importance for him to keep quiet about what he'd done, he bragged to his cellmate, Osama El Attari, about killing Snell. El Attari, who was doing time for serious fraud, went to authorities with this information. He agreed to wear a wire in exchange for a lesser sentence and captured disturbing audio of Avilla Torres talking about how he tied Snell up with her laptop cord and choked her to death. Avilla Torres was convicted of the murder, and DNA evidence further revealed that he had committed a double homicide in his hometown of Zion, Illinois back in 2005. He was still a teenager when he killed the 2 victims and cut their eyes out of their sockets. In hindsight, it appears as though Avilla Torres may have joined the military to evade suspicion. The deranged killer pled guilty to the 2005 murders and was sentenced to death. He appealed the death sentence, but the court upheld it, and he is currently awaiting execution. 6. Twain Gotti. Many rap songs talk about violence, but in most cases, these lyrics don't reflect situations that actually happened, and artists don't expect their words to catch up with them in real life. Back in 2007, 16-year-old Christopher Horton and his friend, 20-year-old Brian Dean, were shot dead on a front porch in Newport News, Virginia. The double homicide went unsolved for years. Finally, in 2013, police received a tip that rapper Twain Gotti Stewart discussed the crime in his song Ride Out. The chilling lyrics, which appeared on his MySpace page in 2009 and on YouTube in 2011, mentioned killing someone on a trap house porch at midnight. This, combined with other clues, pointed toward Twain Gotti as the main suspect. Police charged the then 22-year-old with 2 counts of felony murder, 1 count of unlawfully discharging a firearm, and 2 counts of using a firearm to commit a felony. Investigators believe that Twain Gotti shot his victims after an argument earlier that day. And while they had suspected him of being involved all along, they just didn't have enough evidence to nail him before the tip came in about his self-incriminating song. Twain Gotti was tried as a juvenile because he was a minor when he allegedly committed the murders. He asserted his innocence and managed to avoid a conviction for the double murder charge, but was convicted of multiple other offenses and sentenced to 16 years in prison. He'll be 39 when he gets out of prison, which means he will still probably enjoy several decades of freedom. While his foolish decision to brag is what got him caught in the first place, it's not a bad deal for someone who may have killed 2 people. 5. Blake Fisher. Blake Fisher was the Fish and Game Commissioner for the state of Idaho in late 2018 when he made the mistake of sending trophy hunting photos to at least 100 people from his work email address. The disturbing images featured Fisher and his wife with at least 14 dead animals that they shot and killed during a trip to Namibia. Fisher included captions beneath the pictures, including one that read, "So I shot a whole family of baboons." The heartbreaking image showed the blood-covered victims, including a tiny baboon with its head resting on an adult baboon's chest. Fisher and his wife also killed a giraffe, leopard, impala, antelope, warthog, and more. The photos went viral, sparking widespread outrage among conservationists and animal rights activists. Longtime hunters were also angry, claiming that Fisher's bragging was unethical, and even some of the man's colleagues called on him to resign. Fisher argued that he didn't do anything illegal, and he had a point. But his actions were seen as incredibly distasteful and immoral, especially considering his high-ranking position as a wildlife official. The disgraced trophy hunter eventually bit the bullet and quit his job, but he failed to apologize for his actions in a resignation letter he sent to the Idaho governor. He did, however, admit to using poor judgment, showing poor sportsmanship, and failing to properly respect the animals that he killed. 4. Katie Price. British ex-model Katie Price allegedly made the mistake of driving drunk in 2017 when she was found slumped over and covered in vomit in the back seat of her pink Range Rover after the vehicle crashed into a parked car. Her blood alcohol level was nearly twice the legal limit. Price argued that a friend was driving the Range Rover and had fled the scene after the collision, but she refused to give up the person's name. A judge didn't fully buy the story and deemed Price to be a non-credible witness, but he cleared her of a drunk driving charge, banned her from driving for 3 months, and fined her a few $1,000s for less serious offenses stemming from the incident. Price got off the hook for the most part, despite a witness claiming that they saw Price behind the wheel with her boyfriend in the passenger seat. The ruling was somewhat surprising considering Price's previous history of driving violations, including speeding, running red lights, and driving while talking on her cell phone. She exited the courthouse victoriously pumping her fist into the air and exclaimed, "Brilliant! I thought I was going to get 2 years." She then bragged that she was going to go car shopping. While Price may have avoided the more serious legal consequences she faced, she totally lost in the court of public opinion, which vehemently disapproved of her jubilant behavior. Price was accused of trivializing a serious issue and faced criticism from a mother whose daughter was killed by a drunk driver. People claim that Price got away with a crime because of her celebrity status, and they aren't necessarily wrong. Meanwhile, it appears as though the former model was charged yet again with drinking and driving. This time, it looks like her recklessness has finally caught up with her. Instead of acting cocky, Price pleaded guilty and admitted to taking drugs. She was mandated to rehab and faces possible jail time. 3. Robert Chapman. Just days into the new year, a pro-Trump rally turned deadly when rioters stormed the U.S. Capitol over what they believed was a stolen election. At least 5 people died and 138 police officers were injured while trying to get the insurrection under control. Hundreds of people were arrested in the aftermath of the uprising, but catching them has been a long, drawn-out process for investigation. A man from Putnam County, New York, named Robert Chapman, made their life a little easier after he bragged to a woman he met on Bumble about his participation in the violence. His prospective date was anything but impressed. The woman reportedly responded by telling Chapman that they were not a good match and reported him to the authorities. She showed them the incriminating messages he had sent her about his involvement in the ordeal. Chapman had gone into detail about his actions, telling the woman that he had made it all the way to Statutory Hall. Investigators connected the suspect's claims with police body cam footage from the riot, and the FBI charged Chapman with trespassing and disorderly conduct on government property. And he's not the only protester that got caught by being too open about their alleged crimes. Family, friends, ex-lovers, colleagues, and even internet sleuths have been a big help when it comes to identifying suspects. So much so that the FBI's Washington Field Office Assistant Director, Stephen Danturano, made an announcement urging those who were involved in the insurrection to turn themselves in. He administered a no-nonsense warning, stating, "Even your friends and family are tipping us off. So you might want to consider turning yourself in instead of wondering when we're going to come knocking on your door, because we will." Writing for The Independent, journalist Justin Viejo pointed out that the close connections between the suspects and the people reporting them exemplifies the deep political divide that has come to fracture American society right down to the most intimate and everyday settings. And while we can hope for better days ahead, things only seem to get more polarized as time goes on. 2. Artur Tomoyak. In 2018, 39-year-old Artur Tomoyak made the huge mistake of getting behind the wheel drunk in the English town of Tyldesley. Shortly after, Tomoyak crashed his Mercedes into a Volkswagen Golf, killing a 71-year-old grandmother named Kathleen Brogan and injuring her daughter Jill, who was behind the wheel. He was going 72 miles per hour, 116 kilometers an hour, on a road with a 30 mile per hour, 48 kilometers per hour speed limit. Jill, who was lucky to survive the collision, needed several surgeries to repair damage to her legs and pelvis. Audio footage captured in Tomoyak's car revealed that his passenger, Zygmunt Putek, had repeatedly pleaded with him to slow down before the accident. Tomoyak could be heard telling Putek that he's a better driver when he's had a drink, but he'd had far more than a drink. Earlier that day, Tomoyak had guzzled 2/3 of a bottle of whiskey. He owned up to his actions when interviewed by the police and said that he felt really sorry for what he'd done. Tomoyak pleaded guilty to causing death and a serious injury by dangerous driving. He apologized to the victim's family in court, reassuring them that he was genuinely remorseful for his actions. But sometimes sorry doesn't cut it. It certainly didn't bring back Kathleen Brogan, and it also didn't spare Tomoyak of the 88-month jail sentence he received. He was also banned from driving for nearly a decade. 1. Sierra Halseth and Aaron Guerrero. 16-year-old Sierra Halseth and her 18-year-old boyfriend, Aaron Guerrero, thought they were in love, but Sierra's father, Daniel, had forbidden them from seeing each other. They were determined to be together, and they saw killing Daniel as their only choice for making it happen. In April of this year, Daniel's body was found stabbed and dismembered in his home, which had been set on fire. Family members had trouble reaching Sierra, and soon enough, the teen and her boyfriend became the prime suspects in Daniel's murder. Surveillance footage showed the pair buying bleach, lighter fluid, gloves, and a circular saw in the days leading up to the crime. A couple also recorded videos for their YouTube channel immediately after the killing, bragging about how they had murdered and attempted to dismember Daniel, and saying it was worth it. After mentioning their heinous crime, the pair boasted about how they'd had lots of sex that day, as if their horrific actions came secondary to their selfish enjoyment. They had fled the immediate area in Daniel Halseth's car, and authorities quickly caught up with them in Salt Lake City, Utah. The young lovers' vision of a picture-perfect escape didn't last very long, and they will likely pay lifelong consequences for it. Sierra was charged as an adult, despite being just 16 years old. She was spared the death penalty, but it's a realistic prospect for Guevara, who was an adult when the murder happened. At last update, the teens pleaded not guilty to the crime, but the evidence is stacked quite visibly against them, thanks especially to their recorded admissions to the murder. Thanks for watching. What's the worst thing you've ever heard someone brag about? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already.